Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have a question for the Minister for Education. Firstly, Deputy Speaker, I'd like to give some context for the Minister. As the Minister would be aware, Lindsay is home to the University of Western Sydney, consisting of 40,000 students across 6 campuses, with its Chancellery housed within my electorate of Lindsay. This great university prides itself on its vision, and I will quote, "To be a university of international standing and outlook, achieving excellence through scholarship, teaching, learning, research and service to its regional, national and international communities, beginning with the people of Greater Western Sydney." I'm sure you can see many parallels with what the Minister is achieving in the budget. UWS is a very responsible university and want to encourage people right across Western Sydney to learn and enrol in tertiary education, and have broadly welcomed the government's measures. As a response to the intense scare campaign conducted by those opposite, UWS have felt compelled to now provide further confidence to their student community and have publicly come out to say that they will be freezing and grandfathering this course costs to the student community. However, I would like to know how the Minister's budget measures will overcome other potential barriers to accessing a tertiary education. I would also like to advise the Minister that Lindsay is the 4th youngest electorate in Australia. We're predominantly made up of many young and aspirational, hard-working families working to provide a better future for their children. But there are elements of significant disparity in Lindsay. In Glenmore Park, for instance, the southwest of the electorate, we see a median income for a couple with children of $2,474, higher than the New South Wales average. Further, 33.5% of people are attending some form of educational institution, be it primary, secondary or tertiary. 11.1% are currently enrolled in a university or tertiary education. To the west of my electorate is North St Mary's, about 13 kilometres from Glenmore Park. The average income of a household with children is $1,935 a week. That's $539 per week less than Glenmore Park, lower than the New South Wales national average. In North St Mary's, 33.8% of people are attending an academic institution. North St Mary's is also home to a high school called Chifley College, which is the lowest SES school in the state. Chifley College Dunhaven campus. It's got a lot of Aboriginal children and also refugee children, and has many, many challenges. Yet only 5.1% actually of this community go on to see tertiary education. Let me repeat, in Glenmore Park, 11.1% of the people are currently enrolled in tertiary education. In North St Mary's, 5.1%. This is despite North St Mary's being closer to the local university campus. Minister, I understand a university education, more opportunities become available and your learning potential is substantially higher. In fact, students will go on to earn 75% more on average than Australians who do not get a higher education qualification. I understand in low socioeconomic regions there are a range of contributing factors and barriers to accessing education. However, I think with the disparity I have identified within my own electorate, there is need to make a university education more accessible. Minister, the disparities between the 2 suburbs could not be clearer. My question is, how will the higher education reforms outlined in the budget increase opportunities for students in my electorate?
The question is that the proposed expenditure be agreed to, with the call to the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I thank the member for Lindsay for her contribution. And I can remind her that it wasn't very long ago that I was out in Western Sydney opening the University of Western Sydney College, and Peter Shergold, who's the Chancellor of the University of Western Sydney, is the chairman of one of the working groups that's advising the government on the legislative framework for the reforms that we handed down in the budget. He's doing an excellent job, as are all the Vice-Chancellors and educators who are assisting the government to bring about very far-reaching higher education reform. And I can tell her that Greater Western Sydney will be one of the biggest winners from the government's higher education reforms. One of the points that the member for Adelaide made before was that she tried to suggest that somehow we would be stopping young people from being able to access university through these reforms. What she fails to mention, but I know that the community understand already, is that every single student, whether it's in Greater Western Sydney, whether it's from Walkerville and her electorate, will be able to borrow every single dollar up front for the fees that they will pay to go to university. Every single dollar. No student will be denied the opportunity to go to university because of cost. Not one. Because every single dollar can be borrowed from the taxpayer under the Higher Education Loan Program, which used to be the Higher Education Contribution Scheme, introduced by Labor when they had some policy consistency and some policy responsibility, introduced by the Minister Dawkins in the Keating and Hawke years. And that means that no matter how wealthy you are or how poor you are, you have exactly the same opportunity to go to university in this country, which is why our system is so very different from the United States system. And trying to compare the two is a very false comparison and extremely misleading. It does shock me that in her electorate, in the member for Lindsay's electorate, Glenmore Park would have 11.1% of people enrolled in tertiary education and North St Mary's 5.1%. And the University of Western Sydney is an extremely important part of the economic and social fabric of Greater Western Sydney, with its 6 campuses and with its very determined vision of spreading the benefits of university education to the demographic in that part of Sydney, which is a lower SES, a low socioeconomic status demographic. Now, our reforms will mean that people in North St Mary's who might not be as well prepared for university education as others, who typically use pathway courses into university, will be able to do so because we are lifting the cap on those pathways courses, those diplomas and associate degrees. They'll now be under the same demand-driven system as undergraduate degrees. And that is costing the Australian government or the Australian taxpayer money to bring that about. Because we know that people in Western Sydney typically use those diplomas and associate degrees that might be offered at a place like University College at the University of Western Sydney, use those degrees to train themselves to get the skills that are necessary to then go on and earn an undergraduate degree. And the Kemp-Norton report that I commissioned late last year or early this year, that was handed down a couple of months ago, it said that students that had done those kinds of pathways courses were much less likely to drop out in the first year of an undergraduate degree, and those students that hadn't done those courses, 24% dropped out in the first year of an undergraduate degree. So when I came to sit down and think about reform of higher education, what I wanted to do was establish an equitable higher education system that gave those people who were less likely to go to university a greater chance to go to university. Because, Mr. Chairman, I assumed that I would go to university when I was at school. And I did go to university because I went to an academic school and I had every single advantage that a young person could have. So I didn't sit down and decide to have a higher education system that advantaged people like me. I wanted a higher education system that advantaged people from low SES background. And that's why we are expanding the Commonwealth Grant Scheme to non-university higher education providers, because that will help TAFEs. That will help TAFEs educate more young people to get the same opportunities that I've had in life, to get that start that they need. And that is the answer to the member for Perth's questions.
I thank